Dudley Zoo and Castle is one of those places people seem to have very mixed opinions about. But having visited for years, I wanted to see what it's really like now, especially with a toddler. In this video, I'll be taking you around Dudley Zoo and Castle to show you what there is to see and do, what it's like visiting with a toddler, and how easy it is to navigate the hilly castle grounds. First impressions, the car park is a little dated, but it is reasonably well maintained. When we visited, there are also some work going on between the car park and the entrance, with new pathways and statues being added, which already makes the approach feel a bit more welcoming. I believe this is part of wider improvements happening around Dudley, including the new metro links, which should make it easier to get here without a car in the future. You enter through the main ticket office and shop area, and from there you can either head left or right. If you go to the right, it takes you down towards areas like the farm section and primates, whereas heading left starts your journey up through the rest of the zoo, gradually winding your way up towards the castle. And this is where you really notice it. The whole site is set on a hill, so there is quite a bit of walking involved, especially if you're visiting with a pushchair. It's definitely something to keep in mind when planning your visit. When it comes to the animals, there is a good variety here, but what really stood out for us were the more interactive areas. Our favourites were the farm, the lorikeet house and the lemur walkthrough. These felt the most engaging for younger children and toddlers and gave them a chance to get a bit closer to the animals rather than just looking at them from a distance. The farm area in particular is really well set up for little ones, with a small petting area and a barn where they can see some of the animals up close. It's a nice, calmer space where they can just take their time. The lorikeet house is also a fun one, especially earlier in the day where the birds are a bit more active. You can buy food if you want a more interactive experience, which adds something a little different. Like with most zoos, seeing every animal isn't guaranteed and visibility can be a bit hit or miss depending on the time of day. One thing we did notice, especially with a toddler, is that some of the newer enclosures are quite enclosed and set a bit higher, which meant we often had to lift our little one up to see properly. It's not a huge issue, but definitely something to be aware of. Because the zoo is set on the hillside of a castle, getting around with a pushchair can be a bit of a challenge at times. That said, the main paths are generally wide and smooth aside from cobbled areas up near the castle, so it is manageable and we've done it plenty of times. There are quite a few steps dotted around the site, which makes access to some enclosures a little trickier and sometimes means doubling back on yourself, but overall this only affects a smaller number of areas. If you don't fancy tackling the hill on foot, there are a couple of options. There's a small land train that runs between the lower part of the zoo and up to the castle area. There's also a chairlift that operates in the afternoons, although this isn't suitable for prams or very young children, so it is a bit more limited for families with toddlers. One of the things that really makes Dudley Zoo and Castle different is that it's set within the grounds of an 11th century castle. You can walk right up to the top of the castle via a steep, winding staircase, and the views from the top are really impressive. That said, it's not the easiest with a toddler, especially on busier days, so it's something to plan for. Around the castle itself, there are walled gardens where you can sit down, have something to eat, or just take a bit of a break after making your way up the hill. It's actually quite a nice spot to pause during your visit. Within some of the castle buildings, there are also smaller exhibits, including bits about the history of the site, as well as animal areas like bats and rats, which feel quite in keeping with the setting. This area is also where some of the bird talks take place, which adds a bit more to do if you time it right. And beyond the day-to-day visit, they do host different events here as well. We've previously visited during a classic car event set up in the castle grounds, and it's also known for its spooky side, with occasional ghost tours, if that's something you're interested in. There are also a few play areas dotted around the zoo, and they're actually quite spacious. Some are better suited to older children, but there's a large sandpit up near the castle with buckets and toys, which is a nice option for younger ones. There's also a small fun fair which adds a bit of variety to the day, only open on weekends. Food-wise, there are a few different options available around the zoo, although not all of them seem to be open every day. Near the entrance and gift shop area, there's a board showing which food outlets are operating on that particular day, which is helpful when planning where to stop. The Oak Kitchen appears to be the main cafe and has always been open when we've visited, serving a mixture of hot meals, drinks, and lighter snacks. There are also a few smaller food kiosks dotted around the zoo, although these seem to be open more during busier periods, weekends, or peak seasons. It's probably worth checking in advance if that's important to you. Time to be a bit honest. Reviews of Dudley Zoo and Castle are quite mixed, and I can understand why. Some of the buildings and enclosures do feel a little dated and could benefit from some care and attention. Many of these structures are listed, so they can't simply be replaced, which is part of what makes this zoo unique, but it also means some areas don't feel as modern as others. For us personally, it didn't take away from the overall experience, but it's definitely something to be aware of before visiting. In terms of visiting with a toddler, the layout is probably the biggest thing to consider. The hill and the number of steps do mean you'll need a bit of stamina, especially with a pushchair. You can hire single or double pushchairs at the entrance if you don't want to bring your own, which is also a helpful option. It's also worth noting that some of the more interactive areas, like the lemur walkthrough, you will need to leave the pram outside. So again, something to plan for. This isn't really a place to rush through. To see everything at a comfortable pace, especially with younger children, you're likely looking at most of the day. That said, if you have an annual pass, it does lend itself quite well to shorter, more relaxed visits, which is how we tend to approach it. In terms of pricing, standard admission is £24.95 for adults and £18.40 for children aged 3 to 15, with under 3s going free. Parking is £4 for the day. If you are visiting as a family, it's definitely worth asking about family ticket options, as there are a few available and they can offer a small saving compared to individual tickets. Booking online in advance can also reduce the price slightly. For us, the real value comes from the annual membership. This is £41.75 for an adult and £30.95 for a child, with under 3s still free. If you're local and likely to visit more than once, you only need a couple of visits to make this worthwhile. It also makes it much easier to visit in shorter bursts, which works really well with a toddler, especially if you're planning around nap times. That's how we tend to use it. There are additional perks included too, like discounts on food and drink. If you're driving regularly, there is also a parking pass available, although you'll need to visit quite a few times to get full value from that. With the new metro links being developed nearby, access without a car should become easier in the future. Overall, this is a really unique place, combining a zoo within a historic castle setting. Yes, there are some areas that feel a little dated, and the layout can be more challenging in places, particularly with a pushchair, but for us, it never stopped us from coming back. It offers something a bit different from a typical zoo visit, and having that mix of animals, open space, and history does make it feel like a more varied day out. And as always, I hope this has helped you make a considered choice for your next UK adventure.